Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for a great session. Welcome to JMC Academy, and for those listening online, thanks for joining in. Before we get to why we're here, I've just got a few formalities to do, so bear with me. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the country that we're on. JMC Academy would like to acknowledge the Jagera and Turrbal people as the traditional custodians of Meanjin, Brisbane, the lands on which we work, learn, create, teach, and the land that we are gathered here today. We also pay our respects to Jagera and Turrbal elders past, present, and emerging. So for some housekeeping for those that are here, I'd like to just mention that our bathrooms are located just down the hall, outside the door, on the right-hand side on this floor. In case of a fire emergency, please exit the building via the internal stairs or via the front door, and then safely gather in Fish Lane. In case of a medical emergency, please alert our staff, including myself. I'm watching, and or Max, who is located at the back. Where's Max? Wave your hand up the back there, Max. So Max is one of our first aid officers as well. So that's the formalities. Thank you for that. Just quickly about myself. Daniel Spirovsky, Head of Audio here at JMC Academy. And so it's a pleasure to have you here to join me in discussion with Josh Rogosin. So please give him a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
For the Josh Rogosin experience. I hope you like the play on that. Anyway, I thought I was clever when I did that.
I thought it was great too.
Joe Rogan, Josh Rogosin. Anyway, so yeah, it's really exciting. We started today off at 6 a.m.
It's true.
Yes,
it's been a day.
Maybe we should go back quickly to how we got here.
Yes.
A mutual friend of ours back in Massachusetts.
Yes.
Is that where he's?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Crivet
from Boston.
connected us, and from Boston, he said, "Hey, you should talk to Josh, and he'd love to do a workshop with your students. He's doing a lot of workshops." And so we connected over Zoom. We had a quick call, and he said, "Well, hang on. Well, maybe you can tell the rest of the story."
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for having me, JMC Academy. I'm just blown away by the city of Brisbane, this incredible place where students can come and learn and experience. So much thanks to Dan for having me here. Dan reached out and he said, why don't we do a Zoom class? We have these weekly meetings where we have special guests, talk to all the students. I said, well, actually, I'm going to be in Australia. Why don't I just show up? So y'all who have all of the great ideas and imagination made this happen, and I couldn't be more grateful. We started off this morning at 6 a.m. recording music at the State Library from a local musician as part of a show that I'm now launching called Global Sound Concerts. I'm traveling the world, and I'm learning about culture and music in all these different locations, and it's all about finding musicians where they are from. So Dan coordinated with his fellow friend Greg, and we came up with this wonderful plan to record the music of, I'm not going to mangle this name.
Jungaji.
Jungaji, thank you. Jungaji came with 2 other musicians. We had a bunch of students help running cables and figuring out the shots and the angles and recording on an ambisonic mic so we can add a spatial audio component to the recording that we made basically across the street, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's just been a thrilling dream come true. I dream very big, and Dan, I couldn't appreciate you more for just stepping up to the plate and making it all happen. So thank you.
It's a wonderful thank you. And if you happen to be free tonight at 8:30, Josh will be on ABC Radio with Rebecca Livingston as well, if you want to hear more.
Yes.
So ABC Queensland.
I'm very excited for that. My background is audio broadcast journalism, so showing up at ABC is going to be a massive treat. It's actually how I started at NPR. I was working at a theater down the street in Washington, D.C. called the Shakespeare Theater, mixing shows for audiences of 300 or 400 people, and I used to walk by the NPR building. So I was thinking when I arrived in Brisbane, I'm walking next to the big theater complex, and I'm walking right past ABC Radio, and it just immediately like was like culture shock, and it's like everything came rushing back. Like I was back to where I started my career in a city like Brisbane, just keeping my eyes open and seeing what opportunities presented themselves. Because my first thing was my love of audio. How I applied my love of audio to my work, I hadn't really figured out at all by the time I went to college, by the time I had my first job in my first city. So, keeping my eyes open and being inspired by just things that are around me is super, super important. Like pounding the pavement is something that has rung true for me in my entire career. So I kind of wanted to give you a little background of my story. There we are. Journalism plus music equals magic. So I always thought about capturing audio as a documentarian. So with my work at NPR, working with producers and reporters out in the field, telling stories through sound. And in that experience, I learned all these different sound gathering techniques. So here's a little bit about me. My parents, that's where we all begin, right? You have to remember where you come from, right? My mom was an original Mouseketeer in the 1950s, grew up in Los Angeles. My dad was a conductor for Johnny Mathis and was a composer of musicals. So I always like to pay homage to where I come from, and that it's no accident that my appetite for music and culture come from my parents. I grew up performing in musical theater. I was Tommy in the Who's Tommy. I was Claude in Hair. I was Riff Raff in the Rocky Horror Show for 3 summers in a row. That's where I learned about harmony and really using to learn my ears. And then, of course, like many of us audio engineers, I'm a singer-songwriter. So I would play guitar and I would sing songs, and I learned this beautiful thing that Les Paul introduced us all, multi-track audio recording. Holy cow. So once I got this 4-track Porta Studio, that was it. I caught the bug for audio production, and it's what I knew I wanted to do, either making music or performing myself, or being more behind the scenes and making other people's visions a reality. I learned about processing chains and a bunch of analog gear because I was lucky enough to come at an age where NPR was very slow to transition to digital. So I loved learning about outboard recording gear. Instead of all these little pictures of plugins on a screen, I actually had hardware and patch bays, which I'm sure you guys have here as well. But it taught me a lot about the recording process, signal flow, and how to make something sound good with just a few tools. I would take in feeds from reporters who were based all over the world for NPR, and I would basically just have 3 pieces of gear to clean up the audio that I was recording onto 1/4-inch analog tape. So it was like a parametric EQ or paragraphic EQ by Orban. I had a peak notch filter by Yuri, and I had a DBX 160 compressor. And that was it. Those 3 pieces of gear were the tools that I learned how to clean any audio that came my way. And I still believe to this day that if you only had those 3 tools, you can make anything sound super good. So in my travels, National Geographic magazine collaborated with NPR many years ago. This was 2004, where I got to travel the world. I left my gig doing theater because I learned very quickly that doing audio for broadcast opened up incredible opportunities. I never thought I would be recording music eventually because I started at NPR as a broadcast journalist. That was my title, broadcast recording technician. Kind of dry, but with that opportunity, I got to, yes, take in feeds from reporters all over the world, cleaning up audio, mixing audio stories for the radio, mixing live radio news programs, and yes, traveling the world with National Geographic and NPR to tell stories which they don't do anymore, because that's the way of the world and the budgets. But I caught it right at the time where it was still happening. So I learned all these different stereo sound gathering techniques. Here's a shot of me in Nemea, Greece during the 2004 Summer Olympics, and we were traveling through all these archaeological digs and learning about the history of ancient athletics. And on my head, I fashioned 2 omnidirectional microphones onto a coat hanger that I had attached to my headphones, going into one DAT recorder, and then the second rig was an MS stereo blimp going to the second DAT recorder.
Can I ask?
Yes,
was
please.
that the first time you used that?
Yes. Oh, the binaural rig?
Yeah.
Yes, I invented that because, I mean, look at it. I don't know what people. I think other people now they have the Neumann KU100 head. It would probably be a little unwieldy. I liked the fact that it was super portable. I also had a couple of wireless mics, and I learned from my theater experience that if I clipped a mic onto, whenever you see the actors in theater, they've got the mics either here on the head, or maybe they're here on the temple, or sometimes here Britney Spears style or whatever. I learned from my theater experience that if I could staple a microphone onto somebody's head, they always stay on mic, right? There's none of this going on. So I basically combined my experience of miking actors in the theater into journalism, and I would bring 2 baseball caps, one of which I'm wearing on my head in this photo, and one would be for the reporter, and the other one would be for the person that they were interviewing, and we're like climbing up and over archaeological dig and rocks. Anytime you clip a lav onto a lapel or even a tie, it's pretty difficult not to get rustling. And because I had the luxury of working in audio and nobody cared what it looked like, I was happy to have them wear a cap, clip the little lav at the end of the bill of their cap, and I was golden. So it's like sort of like marrying those 2 experiences which came from completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but as a part of the story of how I became an audio engineer. Another set of recording techniques, of course, is ORTF, Organisation Radio Télévision Française. Very fancy. The French, I guess, gave us this wonderful recording technique. It's basically just 2 cardioid condensers at a 120-degree angle. And what was beautiful about that is I could give one mic to the host, let's say, Dan, you're hosting, and then I would have my mic on a fishpole recording the guests. And we can have a split-track recording, or I could grab both mics, and all of a sudden I'm recording in stereo. So, it's just those ideas of these different sound gathering techniques influenced how I decide I record music as a journalist. Moving on, I was doing spaced omnis. I guess they now call it ambisonic, right? One of my colleagues and producers said, "Oh, you really should record stuff in surround sound. This is 2004. I'm like, how is anybody going to play that back? I figured out how to play it back. Even now, we don't know how to play it back. Sure, there's spatial audio on Apple. Is it a gimmick? Is it just to get more licensing agreements and re-release songs to make money? Probably. Or is it something that really matters? I think the jury's out. Is it?
Depends who you talk to.
Depends who you talk to. The audio industry thinks it's very real, so don't quote me on that. I'm sure it is. So I was recording quad, ambisonic, whatever, back in 2004, and the way I decoded it was actually brought in the 4 channels into Pro Tools free, not Pro Tools first, but back in the 90s it was Pro Tools free. They had a DTS plugin, and I could actually burn an audio file to a DVD disc, put it in a home theater's DVD player, and as long as the home theater could decode DTS, I could actually listen back to my surround recordings on any home theater system. So that was my way around it. Nowadays, they've got Apple going full force on spatial audio, so I'm happy to say that my friends at Soyuz set me up with an ambisonic mic that actually I just got to try for like the 2nd time ever today, recording over at the Talk Circle. So here's an example of recording. This is actually the sound from 2 of these 4 omnidirectional mics that I had on these. This is basically spaced omnis quad recording. So maybe not exactly what you were expecting, right? Like, whoa, that is very arrhythmic, crazy, wow, drumming situation going on. But I love how visceral it sounds, and getting at different distances from the musicians, getting up close, getting further away, setting your levels and hoping for the best. It's really wonderful to use those sounds to help tell a story. And this is what I wanted to play back in context of one of the radio stories that we did, so you can hear how sound plays such an important role. I went through with the reporter here, John Burnett. We sat on the plane for 8 hours back to Paris from Togo, West Africa, and we basically went through, okay, what were the 12 most descriptive, interesting sounds in 10 days of recording 50 hours of DAT tape? And we came up with a list, and that's how we actually structured the story of the piece, all based on what in our mind's eye do we remember as being just a really important moment sonically.
The gods of voodoo are at the heart of a festival that happens every year in the village of Gliji, 30 miles down the coast from Togo's capital city, Lomé. Members of the Gen tribe trek here every September to celebrate the migration of their forebears from Ghana 323 years ago. For them, the Epi-Ekpe Festival is a family reunion, religious revival, and New Year's celebration rolled into one. The names of the chief deities, Mamakole, Atasakumo, and Atakapesu, are written on whitewashed temples shaded by mango trees. Men and women are dressed in togas, white for purity. Some have streaked their torsos with white paint for decoration. When a woman becomes possessed by a spirit, she convulses, slaps her bare chest, and calls out. Her sisters stay close, ready to catch her if she falls, or remove her glass bead necklaces if the trance gets violent. The beat of a talking drum and a cowbell opens a circle in the crowd, which then quickly fills with dancers and song.
So what you just heard probably took 12 hours of recording time to make. And that's really interesting when it comes to journalism, right? And we're, as audio journalists, we're cutting everything out of context and like placing it on top of each other. It doesn't really happen in that time frame. But there's something about it that is forgiving for the audience. I always think, oh, journalistic integrity? I don't know, but it's a lot of fun to layer all of these sounds to try to take you to a place in your mind's eye. It's just... telling stories through sound, this is really what helped me understand that you're not aiming for perfection, or at least I'm not, when I'm going to make a record. I much more approach it as a journalist. I'm trying to capture a moment in time to share the human experience rather than make the permanent record that has to be perfect. And I think that's a little bit different than what a lot of audio producers and film creators. And there's nothing wrong with multi-tracking and using all these effects and doing 20 different takes of the same syllable and choosing just the right run and splicing all together. And that is a beautiful art. It is just not for me.
So we were talking earlier, does that mean that going to a studio isn't the first thing you want to do when you land somewhere?
Right, which is kind of odd for an audio engineer. The first thing that I want to do is figure out a beautiful location that really represents the place and finding a musician who's from that place to learn more about it. If Anthony Bourdain did a show about music, this would be it. And that's what I always say. I want to learn about culture through music the way Anthony Bourdain learned about culture through food. So that's the pitch, folks. Here's another instance of binaural in a dugout canoe. I'll just play a little of this.
After the stone has been revealed, the elders carefully wrap the sacred drum, aklima, in white cloth and carry it into a canoe. With long poles, they conduct the dugout across the placid surface of Lake Togo back to Anejo. As it passes, some women bathing near shore recognize the song of the drum keepers and join in. For Radio Expeditions, I'm John Burnett, NPR News.
So it's all about just, capturing those moments, those unexpected moments that you never would realize. And I'm sorry if I'm playing back a lot of audio clips, but that's like the whole deal is like listening to me is fine, but it's sort of like goes on and on and on. I think by showing you and sharing with you these audio experiences, it helps kind of really illustrate what I'm passionate about. Another instance of recording MS Stereo, which allows you to decode the audio in post-production. It's wonderful because the mono to stereo compatibility is great. And mono to stereo compatibility is still important, people, because I just bought a Beats Pill Bluetooth speaker. Guess what? It's mono. So you got to make sure your mixes for those beach jams work in mono. So a beautiful thing about the MS Stereo recording setup versus spaced omnis or even ORTF is that the capsules of the directional and the bidirectional mic are very close together. So there's no phase issues. The time of arrival of the sound waves to each of the two capsules is going to be the same. So that's why you can make a super wide, beautiful sounding MS decoded audio, and it'll still translate to mono perfectly because you had the mid capsule and the side capsule were right next to each other. So here's an example of what I wanted the ocean to just sound bigger than life. So I made sure to get my mic set up. I basically walked into the sea and waited for the loudest, most horrific sounding waves to come because this was a story about the slave trade in Ouidah, Benin. So I wanted it to sound like, oh my gosh, we're boarding the ship for the last time. Holy crap. I just love how it sounds like it's like the ocean is about to swallow you, you know? And that I didn't put any effects on that. I didn't boost the low end. I didn't add any spatial anything. That is the MS Stereo decoded and recorded up close and personal with like really nice microphone preamps and super, super hot. So I like to think of like approaching this stuff as a journalist, capturing things as they are in real life. And that's what leads me to Tiny Desk. Tiny Desk started in 2008. I didn't join Tiny Desk because I was busy doing this other stuff, traipsing around the world, recording stories through sound. I didn't get on board until 2014. My predecessor, Kevin Waite, he came up with a whole idea to record musicians with one stereo shotgun mic gathered around it, kind of like as a journalist would out in the wild. And I basically augmented that kind of stereo mic. Maybe he had some audience mics up, and he would supplement a couple of things, never going over 8 channels. And those early Tiny Desks sounded great. But then when I came on board, I wanted to basically keep that same acoustic aesthetic of it feeling like a live stereo recording, but augmenting that main stereo mic with a bunch of other direct channels. At first I limited it to 16, and then by the time I left I was up to 22, and then like, okay, after 24, that's it, folks. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing, of course, because the more you add, the more control you have. But there's something beautiful about, okay, if I only had that one stereo mic, can I make a good recording? And I think that's kind of like the mentality around Tiny Desk and around how I approach recording music as a journalist. Oh, I'm sure someone's explained the origin story to you, or do you want me to say that part? Yeah, okay. So the Tiny Desk concert series came about out of necessity, really. Bob Boylan and Stephen Thompson were at South by Southwest at a club listening to a musician, as the story goes.
And the crowd just talking was louder than Laura.
I just realized that rather than going to shows where very quiet singer-songwriters are drowned out, we could just have them perform at our desks.
So we're going to videotape this for our blog, and maybe it's the start of something, and maybe it's not.
Tiny Desk started in 2008, 2 cameras, 1 microphone, and that was it. And now we've come to a place where artists are asking their record labels if they could come and perform. This will be our 500th Tiny Desk.
I didn't know it was actually in an office.
It's hard to see on the videos because you only see the desk, but if you turn it around, we're 5 feet away.
Wow, this is a lot of people in a tiny office. I love it. I'm Taylor. Welcome to my Tiny Desk concert.
We want to push artists to that point of where they're a little bit uncomfortable, because when they're in that spot, they're gonna do something different.
This is weird as hell for me. Never done anything like this.
We've never done this like this. Can we do it? We're gonna try this.
I'm sorry, I'm shy. If this was like a big gig, I'd probably be climbing all over here and like running around, but I feel very nervous.
It's a very intimate, it's a very special, it's a very weird experience, and I think that's why people love it.
Is it just platonic, strictly just as friends, or the tie that type you to? How does this work when you mess up during Tiny Desk? Really?
And we'll play the embarrassing part too.
Oh, wow.
The breadth and scope of the sorts of music we do has changed, and the audience matches that growth.
It's usually a much younger, more diverse demographic consuming Tiny Desk concerts than the people who are consuming NPR News. So we're really introducing the brand of NPR to an entire new audience. I mean, I almost want to cry watching that.
Listening to those artists all say, I've never done this before. This is so weird. Was that like, yes, moments for you? Like, that was part of the plan? Like
I don't know. It's a great question.
put them in places in a situation that was completely unusual.
Yeah, I think it's just an amazing opportunity to get artists out of their comfort zones and to make them not use in-ear monitors and to make them pretend like they're sitting around the campfire, right? Or they're on their tour bus or they're in their hotel rooms jamming, and to sort of strip away the crutches, right? Strip away, all right, we're gonna do this one. We gotta this is live, and then people are gonna watch it, and it's kind of just gonna be out there. And it's just sort of, it levels the playing field, but it also makes for an opportunity where, I don't know, it doesn't have to matter so much. Every time I was doing stuff, like as a journalist, I'm just cranking out content, right? It's like a machine, right? It's like social media, right? You gotta feed the beast. Well, it's the same with journalism. Every single day. Tonight, I'm going to go speak on ABC, and I'm super excited because I'm an audio guy. I'm a journalist, broadcast guy. But I love the fact that I'm going to just be in the air for 15 minutes and gone. So there's something different, and that's how the mentality that we put on Tiny Desk is the same. But the difference is that it's on YouTube forever, and this could be the biggest thing that an artist ever does, and often is. So it's very interesting to create something that's so temporarily permanent.
So you were talking about absolutely great comments there. You were talking about feeling emotional watching that. So 800 shows, 10 years, you know.
And I left. It wasn't for me. What can I say?
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity, in everyone's career. I'm going to be 50 years old in a year and a half, And, I think there's a journey that everyone's on. I had a wonderful time where I caught the tail end of analog at NPR. And then I caught the tail end of radio expeditions and traveling the world with National Geographic. And then I caught sort of like this amazing wave of Tiny Desk from something that, some people know about, and now is the must-do, everyone has to do it requirement. I'm sitting at the Tiny Desk. We're about to record Bono and The Edge. Ever heard of them? And I'm like, check, doing my little line check. Bono walks in, The Edge right beside him, and they beeline it through the office and stop right in front of me. And Bono goes to me, "Are you the guy?" And I said, "No, Bono, you're the guy." And he's like, "Oh my God, how do you do it? How do you make it sound so wonderful?" I said, Bono, I tell you, but I just had to have to kill you. And we had a good laugh over it. He signed my favorite U2 album is The Unforgettable Fire. And he said, "Is this for you?" And I said, "Yes." And so he crossed out the word fire and he wrote the word Josh. So it says The Unforgettable Josh. Love, Bono. I'm like, what is my life? Anyway, that job was terrible. I left.
Most people would be going, why? Because there's more to tell.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here where I got out of it and I gave it everything I could. I introduced theater to Tiny Desk, so there was never any Blue Man Group. That was the first one I did. There was never any Hades Town. There was never any Wicked with Stephen Schwartz playing the piano. There was never any Lion King. There was never any Six. That was my contribution from my theatrical background that I could give to the show. And it kind of just came to the point where once Bob Boylan, who created the show, who's my dear friend and mentor, he decided to leave, I just thought, it's time for the next chapter. It's time for the next person to take the reins. It's like the natural transition of power that sometimes we accomplish in the United States.
But
sorry, I didn't mean to make this political.
Moving on. But putting that aside, I'm thankful that you chose to move on from NPR Tiny Desk, because you wouldn't be here if that didn't
That's
happen.
right. And I think a huge part of me and my ambition and my priority moving forward from this point on, I left in March, which was not that long ago, right? Is to pay it forward, to go out and inspire the next generation, whatever you want to call it, cliche, of audio professionals and musicians to pursue things, not to be afraid to pursue things, to understand that nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Everybody's making it up. So don't be scared. Just go with your gut. That's all I can say.
And I can say that I saw that this morning at 6 a.m. We had 6 students who bravely got up early and joined us over at the Talking Circle, and you were right in there like, okay, I need this set up. Can you please do this? This is that. You were training. You were teaching. You were passing on what you knew. You were telling them how to put gaff tape down.
Yeah. I am a micromanager. Here's how bad I am. I see these lovely students gaffing some cables down. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Thank you for taking the initiative. I'm so grateful. No one's going to trip now. But when you're putting down gaff tape, think about what happens at the end of the night, right? Who has to peel that up? Is it going to stick to the cables? Maybe we'll just do a few pieces across and we leave a little fold under and it's a courtesy tab. These are like the stupid, tiny, minutia details. Everything is in the details. And the simple detail of how to put down gaff tape is important. Yeah, that was deep.
And it made a difference to the recording.
I think so. At least it made a difference to me and my micromanagement self.
No, but I definitely know that experience will stick in the minds of the students that attended. And I think it's worth mentioning that on your, is it on LinkedIn or Instagram? Your definition of AI?
Oh, yes. Authentic, what was it? Authentic intimacy. That's the one.
That's the one.
Yes, my definition of AI is authentic intimacy, which is kind of like whatever. Like, I think there's a place for AI. I think for all of those podcasters out there that need a music bed, that want to tell the computer to write something for them, that's great. But to think that it's going to replace personal connection, creativity, travel, intimacy, is ridiculous. So, going out today with the students in a moment of time, capturing an artist who's from Brisbane to record in this gorgeous location, 3 songs that they wrote where we couldn't control everything. And that was the beauty of it, right? Embrace the chaos. There was loud motorcycles zooming by. There was actually a blower, like a leaf blower in the distance, and it was kind of annoying. So I'm like, Dan, can you go talk to the leaf blower? So there's instances that you can control, but there's other instances that are just like part of life. I think there was one part of the recording at the beginning where a bird was chirping super loud. It was like so beautiful moment during this beautiful introduction to this song, and I'm gonna be cranking the hell out of that bird.
But it really was special this morning. And there was a moment,
stunning.
and it was visceral, and that's what music's about, that connection.
That's right.
And that
And
experience.
Yeah, and capturing a moment in time rather than trying to make something perfect. Because guess what, folks? Nothing in life is perfect. Everything is temporary. So that's what I love journalism. Should we move on, or should we talk about other stuff?
You're cool.
Okay, why all the shotgun mics? That's always a question. So my predecessor and mentor, Kevin Waite, he came up with the idea to use the Sennheiser MKH. The 416 is the mono version that you always see on the end of boom poles on film sets. 418 is the MS version, and he loved it because it was so low profile. It's all about when I'm miking something, I love the shotguns because you can have them further away. You don't have this blocking the facial experience and expression. Every time you see a music, anything, performance, it's always this, right? And you're kind of losing. There's this thing, literal object that's coming in the way of that authentic intimacy of connecting, right? Especially on screen, YouTube style. So if you have these shotgun mics down and out of the shot, it's still designed to pick up at a distance. This SM58 is not. This SM58, you got to be like this. But a shotgun, you can be like this. It'll sound just as good. And guess what? I don't use a PA, and I don't use monitors. So it doesn't matter how loud I make the shotgun. If we had a shotgun mic right here, and our friends in the booth here had to crank that shotgun mic loud enough so that you could hear my voice nicely and present like this, it would create a tremendous, horrific feedback loop through those speakers. That's why I don't have those speakers. I also don't love the sound of the speakers getting back into the microphone, creating sort of like this hollow weirdness. If you just force musicians to, I guess they could just use in-ear monitors, but just to use nothing, just to adjust their volumes to each other so that they can hear each other organically in the room, something different happens. It forces the musicians to really listen to each other in a way that they may never have before or just have to again. Go ahead.
We okay to open up for some Q&A?
Yeah.
If anyone's got any questions at this
Yes,
point.
please. If there's anybody who wants to chime in, interrupt, ask any questions, I can pull up Tiny Desk Concerts past that I've worked on. I can explain my whole setup, anything you want.
And if you do ask a question, please wait till you get the microphone. Just
Yes, exactly. So our friends online. Hi, friends online. Thanks for being here.
Hi there. How important, a two-part question. One's relating to the set of the Tiny Desk, and the other is your earlier part of your career. How important do you think dynamic range is to the ability for audio to tell a story? And secondly, with the Tiny Desk, is the busy background with all the books and everything, is that to help with diffusion, or is it just by chance that all that stuff's there?
These are two great questions. So in terms of dynamics, yeah, I always say I love the quiet bands. Like Andy Schauf, he's saying so quietly. I didn't even mic his guitar separately. I just had the stereo shotgun mic, and the guitar was like plenty loud in relation to his vocal to just record them together, and it made it for a beautiful recording. Or Jay Som, another really quiet, intimate one that I love, maybe lesser known. I love it when the musicians sing super like quietly. Let the microphone work for them. Let me crank up those preamps and those. Then you really get to hear those expensive, beautiful microphones and air handling noise. Like for example, in here, I know that projector would be my nemesis, but we have tools like Isotope RX to kind of go in and isolate that. Here, let's all listen. What do we hear? stuff, right? There's some stuff. So I like it when they're really quiet because I can create a more intimate feel. And then, of course, when they get loud, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, oh my God, do you guys know Leanne LaHavas? Or have you seen her Tiny Desk? She sings a song called Forget. And she sings super quiet, and then she sings super loud. All in within, like, and if I pulled up the session, you'll see I had her vocal at, like, -20 and +20. -20 and +20, like, literally between phrases in the song Forget. So there's going to be an ad here. Let's not listen to that. Oh, no, there's no ad. Great. It's this last song here.
Tell you twice.
That was the end.
Need to tell you twice. There is no need.
So she's singing very quietly right here.
Twice.
She's singing very loud right there. She's singing very quietly right there. Very loud again. Super quiet. Which was extremely challenging because I couldn't get her quiet voice above the acoustic guitar where I wanted it. So there's some stuff you just kind of have to live with. But dynamics are huge to affecting a performance. And I think Leanne LaHavas was the first one that popped into my mind for something that would illustrate that. Your second question was about all the shit on the shelves. All that stuff ended up there by accident. It really just started with like a couple of CDs. Those wooden, I think they're like IKEA, I don't even know. But they were literally made to hold CDs. They were the width of a CD. And then slowly but surely all the CDs kind of went away, right? Because digital. And then people who would come to the Tiny Desk would leave stuff behind there. And certainly we would go behind and rearrange things, and people would send me things and I would put them up there, and I would plant little things like that I loved, like different microphone companies or whatever that I loved. I would just stick back up there. And so it all happened very, very organically. There's no sound treatment. It's literally an open office plan. You can hear the air handling when it's like the summer. It sounds just about as loud as it does in here. So if you have a very, very quiet vocalist like Julian Baker, I remember cranking the hell out of her vocal because she was so quiet. And as a result, I had to use some noise canceling software. And I don't know how I did. Let's just like take a jaunt down memory lane here.
Fruity beer, lager
oh
beer,
no, not fruity
craft
beer.
beer.
Oh no, come on.
Zero-alc beer.
You know what? I don't pay for YouTube Premium for a reason. I want to see how the rest of the world experiences my content. You know what I mean? You can even hear something like dangling against a mic stand. I mean, I have things cranked.
Wish I could write songs about anything other than death.
Look how far she is from that mic.
Can't go to bed without drawing the red, shaving off breaths. Each one so heavy, each one so cumbersome, each one a lead weight hanging between my lungs in my gut. Sweat on the microphone, breaking my voice. Whenever I'm alone with you, can't talk. But isn't this weather nice? Are you okay? Should I go somewhere else and hide my face? A sprinter, learning to wait. A marathon runner, my ankles are sprained.
Yeah, so it was so quiet in that room. I mean, you could barely hear her.
But I would also say what you were saying before about the mic being away. I mean, there's something so special about just seeing an uninterrupted voice.
Exactly, and also
Really
just hearing the air.
Yeah.
I know it's weird. It's like, you know what's great? I don't have to deal with plosives. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to deal with proximity effect. I don't have to EQ the snot out of the thing because someone's holding the mic like this. This is not the way to hold the mic, folks.
So the rule was that you could amplify yourself, but you wouldn't have wedges.
That's
and
right.
To the point that the sound source had to come out, but blend in acoustically.
That's right. Right. So,
with the
like,
other instruments.
what's an example? Gosh, there's so many. Let me just see what I have here.
Which one of the 800 would you like
It's just
to?
too many. It's too many. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. So you'll have like a keyboard or that needs obviously a keyboard. We're not going to hear acoustically. So I'll run a stereo out of a keyboard through a wedge like this and take the stereo out for the recording, and then we'll hear the keyboard come through here. But we'll ask the keyboard player, all right, you need to dial your volume to match the level of the acoustic instruments and primarily the acoustic vocal. So like, what is one? Like Tom Misch.
Also, if you're online, you can put a question into the chat, I believe.
Yes, friends
And,
online.
We have someone watching the questions.
It's like here we've got a pretty basic setup, typical, but you can see we actually have a keyboard player playing all kinds of synthy stuff back here. So I actually have them going through like a 4 stereo input Roland keyboard amp, and every single keyboard that they bring, I'm actually just gonna submix into that stereo keyboard amp. So they can have 4 stereo outputs. We balance them. I'm basically using the keyboard amp to submix all of the keyboards that he brought.
Move my mood along. What I cannot say, you'll hear through my guitar. She told me at the bass line, and everything will be alright. She told me that the groove is mine.
And of course, the electric guitar, you're not going to hear that acoustically. So he has an amp, and we just dial in and balance the amps to Tom's vocal, which is just in the room. I did end up setting up a little PA after many years. I had like 4 small little Genelecs on all the way around the perimeter of the desk. Or actually, there's 6 of them. And the only thing I would send to them is like the mid capsule of the MS stereo shotgun mic, just for the lead vocal to get above the band if they were very quiet vocal. But it was so subtle, it wouldn't really help them at all. Maybe a teeny bit. It was just so that the room could hear the vocal above a full band. Like if you think about what Tower of Power, that was a very big setup, which I actually didn't have enough inputs. Again, this was a time I was using 16 inputs. There's a Hammond B3 in this setup. All the horns, except for the baritone sax, were picked up by my room mics. So the only horn that has a clip-on mic is the baritone. I put the vocalist on the desk because there's no room for him on the floor. One of the best drummers in the world is completely blocked in the back. You don't see him the whole concert. There he is, David.
Where you can sing your song and do it all night long. On the soul side of town. On the soul side of town. Soul side of town. Listen to me. It's not a place. Soul side.
I really wanted that baritone sax. I just wanted it. So, like, in this instance, the horns for me aren't loud enough. I had no control over that. And that's fine. Because guess what? We'll make more.
But I liked what you were saying earlier about the fact that this isn't the album. So if you really
That's
want
right.
crispy corns and in your face, well, go listen to the album.
Perfect balance, right? But I do the best I can.
So it was knowing your limits and accepting that, and knowing what your intention was. That this is all about intentionality, capturing a moment, not creating a record.
That's right. And now moving forward with the Global Sound Concerts project, I just wanted to play you a little bit about what I'm up to with that. We can hear a second of this. I like recording musicians that you may have heard in a beautiful symphony hall with lots of reverb and space. I put a mic right up in his cello, and I wanted to hear it gritty and dirty, because guess what? I've never heard Yo-Yo Ma like that. That's not how you record a cello. That's how I record a cello. Yeah, very straightforward. I'm basically just using this cello track and putting on a stereoizer because I just had one mic right up in it. And I wanted to turn a very sort of mono thing into how we actually perceive sound, which is in stereo. So my favorite plugin is free. It's called Ozone Imager. And it's great. I put it on all kinds of mono sources.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
Yes,
In the
we got
back.
one at the back.
Love hearing how raw everything is, how you do it. Yeah, look, it's just one of those things I loved hearing, because there's nothing better than miking a drum kit up with 2 mics. And there's nothing better than doing a gig with no effects. And I went to see Steely Dan and I went, there's nothing. What's going on? I was expecting, a stack like Steve Lukather might play through, but it was just so raw and honest, and I love it. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done. Amazing.
Thanks for that comment.
Brilliant.
That's really sweet.
Another question here about.
Please.
Yes. Hello there. I am very new to like audio engineering, mixing, mastering, all that type of stuff. A lot of the songs I make are through like FL Studio or Logic Pro, that type of thing, and very electronic, mostly digital. I don't know how to say this, like digital instruments. Yeah, MIDI instruments. And I kind of don't know what I'm doing. How do you master and soundstage digital instruments specifically instead of physical ones, because you can't actually plot it out? And maybe I could get like an audio plugin or something that can do that for me, but
meaning balancing the different sources?
Yeah, like sound staging.
It's exactly the same,
Okay.
right? So if you have acoustic musicians, like today we had one guitarist and singer, one keyboard player and singer. So we were talking about how are you going to pan that out in post? Well, normally, perhaps, you would have the main vocal and the center guitar in the center. You would have the other guitar and the other vocalist on the right, and you would have the other keyboard and the other vocalist on the left. But I know that's not how I'm going to mix it. I'm going to mix it with the center person's guitar on the left. I'm going to mix it with the right person's guitar on the right, and I'm going to mix the keyboard player who's over here full stereo. So you'll get some interesting balancing that's happening, and when the camera's just on the two guitarists, it'll make sense audibly because that guitar is on the right and that guitar is on the left. So in other words, I'm just making it up. There are no rules to any of this. Whatever sounds good to you is correct. I wanted to show you just an instrument. Is this gonna come up? Yes. This is all electronic instruments. Everything you hear is MIDI. And this is how we did it. Well, the beginning is going to be this, not exactly MIDI.
On croit parfois que c'est la seule manière de les faire taire. Ces pensées qui me font vivre un enfer.
It was all triggered by MIDI
Ces
instruments.
pensées qui me font vivre un enfer.
télé et la chaîne culpabilité. Mais faut bien se changer les idées. Pas trop quand même, sinon ça repart vite dans la tête. Et c'est trop tard pour que ça s'arrête. C'est là que j'aimerais tout oublier. Du coup, j'ai parfois eu des pensées suicidaires et j'en suis peu fier. On croit parfois que c'est la seule manière de les faire taire. Ces pensées qui me font vivre un enfer. Ces pensées qui me font vivre un enfer.
I love digital instruments. You want to know why? You can make them sound huge. Yeah. That's also a super organism. When they brought a bunch of like samples and things that they were playing. They wanted me to just mic their tiny little amps that they brought for each of their samples. I'm like, yeah, totally, I'm going to do that. And then I took the stereo direct out because I'm an audio engineer and I want it to sound huge.
That's great. Jared, we've got a question over there.
Hey man, my name is Jared.
Hey.
I just want to ask how much post is going into sessions like these? Like for example, if you have a drum kit that day and it's probably like 2 mics maybe. So are you like removing bleed and then the bleed into the vocalist mics as well and stuff like that?
Yeah, I do a lot of mute automation, I call it, which basically if you look at my sessions, here's one for Global Sound Concerts right here. You can see every time this guitar is played, I have it unmuted, but every time like this singer isn't singing, I mute it. So I handle bleed by just focusing in what is making sound and when I need it, and paying very close attention to what's happening in the music. Did someone just play a really cool lick? Even if it's during a verse, if Thundercat plays a super cool lick during Mac Miller's Tiny Desk and Mac Miller is in the middle of a verse, I don't care. I'll let that bass lick pop out. And it makes it, to me, I make very clear decisions about what I'm mixing. There's an example here with Superorganism that I was going to play. And it's something that I love because it's something that could have so easily been missed. But I just love this. They're all playing Foley. This is the one band where they wanted me to record just the amps of their sound effects.
Oh, have you ever woke up from a daydream?
But I recorded the direct out.
Gone crazy. You people are all the same. Going blah, blah, blah. Going bang, bang, bang. Oh, I'm a laid back girl. Float in the sun, looking down at the world. Oh, just sipping, it's kind of my thing. You do you, I'll do me. Chilling
Right
at
here.
the bottom of the sea, and I say, I'm at the
You almost miss it, but this guy right here flicks a ruler that's right here. And I loved it so much that in post-production, I created another instance of that microphone that was closest to the ruler, because guess what? I didn't mic the ruler. Damn, right? So it's like there's so much going on. So in order to get things where I need it, like when Thundercat's playing the shaker during Mac Miller, I didn't know he was going to play the shaker. He was super far away from the microphone, but I created another instance of that microphone, EQ'd the snot out of it to bring out all that shakery sound, and the same thing with this ruler, which I find the most important part of this Tiny Desk concert is right here.
You do you,
It's right here.
Watch. Bottom of the sea, and I say,
That's the most important part of the whole concert. Which is not true, but it's a detail that I find differentiates a good audio engineer who's really listening to everything that's going on and making sure to get the point across, even if it didn't happen in real life.
It's almost like forensic listening.
Yeah.
But for a creative outcome.
Same with this girl with the bucket of water. I didn't have a mic in there, so I created another instance of this mic that's next to the bucket of water and EQ'd the snot out of it to try to get the sound of her swirling in the bucket of water.
I'm happy just being a prawn, 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 prawn.
Right there. Hear it?
Oh, have you ever seen a prawn cause war? Have you ever kissed a prawn, got a cold sore?
Right, so
have you ever seen a prawn kick off?
these guys show up. What do you do? What do you do? It's a lot of just thinking on your feet, deciding knowing what you need, and making the musicians understand that you know what you're talking about and that you have their best interests in mind. Like when David Crosby demanded to have monitors, and I said, well, we don't really do that, but guess what, Mr. Crosby? I'm going to do everything I can to get you a monitor. I'm going to put anything that you want in it. Can you just do me one favor? Can we just try the first song without it, just to see how it feels? Okay. Play the first song. Thunderous applause. They go on, and it's fine. So it's all about how do you approach an artist, and a huge part of what I do and what I've learned over the years is when Anderson .Paak, and he's kind of off mic, I wait for the song to end. I jumped up on top of the desk and I went, "Whoa, oh my God, that was so awesome!" Right in the middle of the filming. And then I said, "Hey guys, I hope you don't mind, but could we do that first song one more time? I had Anderson's mic a little bit further away. I need to get it closer. What do you say, audience? Do you want to hear that again?" Of course, yeah. And then he starts the song with "Yes, Lord," which he didn't do the first time, and it was all in great fun, and I got what I needed, but I stopped the show. And that's huge, knowing that you can stop the show, knowing that you should stop the show, and knowing when you shouldn't, and knowing the difference. So when I was recording her with Daniel Caesar, she shows up at the end of the concert, and she's super far off mic, like this far. He's here, and during the rehearsal, they were doing Hootenanny style, like this, and it was perfect. And then during the real thing, he's here and she's here. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? And I had a freak out moment, and then as you can see in this video here, you'll see me
show you how
when
to
she comes
compose a
out.
sim-
Sorry for that. Oh, targeted ads. That's nice. So it's right when she comes out, I realize she's too far off mic, and I have a decision to make right here. Do I stop the show, or can I salvage it? So watch the bottom left corner of your screen. That's me going, oh, fuck. I run over to my recorder and I solo the side channel of the MS stereo mic to make sure I have enough of her in it. Because she sings.
You don't know, babe, when you hold me.
Take a look at that. Where is she? She is nowhere near that mic. So my decision as audio engineer, do I stop the show? The vibe was good. Oh my God, this is going to be hard. Do I make them do it again at the end? These are all decisions that I don't ask the producer because they don't know. You know, they're like, oh, don't bother them. Or maybe they want to do it like, no, you know, right? You're the one who's going to have to mix it. So you have to figure out, did I get what I need? And you need to have the courage and the attitude and make it in good fun, you know. Make sure your personality comes across. All that stuff is you won't learn in any school.
So you were talking about there was a time where the show got to a point where there was a sound that was established and you'd built a trust, even for the artists that hadn't played yet. And when they turned up, they said, "You do you."
Usually, I mean, I was very fortunate, but by the time I left, you know, the series was extremely well established. Everyone understood. They were just like, "Oh, you're the one who does it? Great, have at it." And that was such a wonderful privilege. And then to share that information with all the other engineers that I've taught to do it after me, so that I can move on and bring other beautiful things into the world. Because I know Tiny Desk is there, will exist, be incredible forever and evermore. My fingerprints are all over it, and I'm so proud of that.
That's amazing. It's a nice segue, I think, to talk about global sound concerts.
Yeah. Okay, so the next venture. Thank you.
Is there anyone on the online that's asked a question, Max? Have we got anything? No, but that's all good. We've got a question at the
please.
front.
Did you have any say in the choice of guests, like based on the sound requirements that were needed for this production?
Any of the shows? Or my pitches were always like nerdy musical theater stuff. So I brought in like Wicked and Hadestown and The Lion King, Band's Visit, and Shocked and Blue Man Group. But yes, I was often put in touch with band managers and things like this, like Duran Duran and Red Hot Chili Peppers. And it became very clear after these conversations they really wanted to do it. But once, they realized what Tiny Desk is and what we do, I have so much respect for them saying, actually, that's not what we do. That's not what we're comfortable with. We want to represent ourselves in the best light. And if you don't do overdubs, and if you don't let us use backing tracks, and if we can't have in-ear monitors, we're not going to do it. And guess what? Good for you. That's great. You don't have to. Doing Tiny Desk is not a requirement. So that's a great question. So here's my new venture. I'm really inspired to tell stories about places and people from all over the world. This is why I'm here in Brisbane. I've never been to Australia. I've never been to all of the places I'm going to travel with this series. I'm just making them. I'm putting them out on my own YouTube channel. Right now I'm piloting them. Once I have 10 or 12 or 15 that I'm proud of, I'll start releasing them as like a pilot season and see if anybody notices or cares. Because guess what? When Tiny Desk launched in 2008, nobody noticed or cared until about 2014. So I'm not doing it for the numbers or to make money or the success. I'm just doing it for the love of doing it.
Ya no canto las coplas, ni duermo de tu lado.
Mexico is a mixture of a lot of things, a lot of colors, a lot of cultures, a lot of food, a lot of music. But Mexico, another part of Mexico, a big part of Mexico, is a Mexico that was here before us. Those people are nuestras madres, nuestros padres, nuestras abuelas y nuestros abuelos, nuestros ancestors, our ancestors. So that's why it was really important for me to record this session here.
And I miss you sometimes, but beyond you, I also see the flowers. I also see the caterpillars.
Where everything here is alive. And thank you so much for being here in this beautiful place of Zacatitos in San Jose del Cabo, amongst the mountains, which is my favorite thing ever.
playing gypsy jazz here at the old cemetery in Todos Santos, Baja California Sur.
I did this with the students in Berkeley, Valencia, Spain.
Ya sé que nos conocimos ayer, que no eres de aquí, solo hablas inglés, but just call me, baby, just call me. Que ahora ya no duermo bien y no sé por qué, pero estoy obsessed, yeah. Just call me, baby, just call me. Ya-da-da-da, ya-da-da-da, ya-da-da,
We are in Las Artes y las Ciencias, my city, Valencia. And well, my Spanglish is because of Valencia, you know. I mean, here is full of people speaking English, Bulgarian, well, every language. And it's very cosmopolitan.
Plantas de amor y sanación, mi corazón la entrego abiertamente a la creación, mi rendición, espíritu antiguo tan presente. Solo hay que confiar para sentir la tierra con su vibración cantar. Qué hermosa es la vida.
Our music is an expression of gratitude, bringing light to everything and expressing all the beauty that nature, that great spirit, Mother Earth is sharing.
Dejo que me recuerde mi canto, que siempre camino en suelo sagrado, que soy hijo del misterio que me ha dado este regalo.
I love having this experience of performing my music for a yoga class, watching all these amazing bodies move. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I have to catch my breath because it's so moving.
Thank you. Yeah, so, you know, go out and do stuff and don't care about anything about what other people are thinking. Or it's so hard to put yourself out there in this world of being inundated, of everyone being so good at social media or whatever it is. Just, you know, follow your own instincts and don't be afraid to just try stuff, because none of it matters, like, at all.
So I applaud you with what you're doing, and I'm sure, like me, you would wish Josh the most incredible success with what he's doing. He's recorded his first Australian artist. I'm sure there'll be many more. So that's happened today. When do you think we would expect that to come out?
Great question. Again, I think I have, that was my 9th show that I've recorded, and I've only put together this little sizzle reel. And I'm trying to decide if I want to intercut more interview stuff that we've done to turn it into more of the Anthony Bourdain dream, or to let it be more like a Tiny Desk concert where it's just things. So I need to workshop some ideas, and I'm thinking after I have 12 or 15 shows that I'm really proud of, I'm just going to release them maybe on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis till they're all done, call it Pilot Season 1, and see if anybody notices or cares.
Well, I'll be sharing it, that's for sure.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, look, we've come to that time where it's time to switch to our next phase. So this part of the session is going to come to an end. So if there's any last questions, any comments, anyone want to share anything? Yes, we've got a question. Just hold for the mic.
I've been loving everything that you've been talking about and doing so far, but this isn't really a music question. It's more of like a human question. But I was wondering, over the 10 years of Tiny Desk, how did your relationship with Bob Boylan evolve, and how did you continue to innovate the Tiny Desk experience?
Thank you. Yeah, Bob is such a wonderfully spirited human being who I met at the very beginning of my career at NPR back in 1999, 25 years ago. I remember being an audio engineer that was taking in feeds from reporters and mixing stories, and yes, mixing All Things Considered, the radio program, on the air live. And Bob Boylan was the director of All Things Considered. And that was his responsibility to choose all the music bumpers in between the news stories. Everyone would write into Bob, what was that song you played between this story and this story? I love that music. That's what gave Bob the idea to start All Songs Considered, a music show for your computer. This was long before podcasts ever existed, and Bob was making one. That's like the innovative thinker he is. And also just, he's a musician himself. We would organize jam sessions in Studio 4A in the old building at NPR, and anyone in the entire company was welcome to come and bring a song, and 20 musicians would just jam together horribly. I mean, it sounded terrible, but it was so much fun, right? Who cares? And I remember I brought in very early on the song Dear Mr. Fantasy by Traffic. And it goes, Dear Mr. Fantasy, tell me a song. Anyway, I belted the shit out of it, and I kind of like blew the doors off of him, and I sang much better than I just did, I promise. And you know, with the guitar in full gusto, and he was like, oh my God, Josh, you can sing, that's crazy. And then we just started a friendship from then, and then I left DC and NPR DC to work at NPR West, and then I went to transfer because the hours were terrible. I was waking up at 3 in the morning because broadcast journalism is a bitch. And then I left NPR West to work at NPR New York, and I absolutely loved NPR New York. I worked there for 3 years, and then in 2009, guess what? There was a financial crisis, and I got laid off with a lot of other people. So I dusted myself off, found a job back in Los Angeles at Marketplace, which is sort of like a news radio finance show, and then made my way back to New York City to work on Studio 360. And finally, you know, I worked with Bob for 5 years at the beginning of my career. Then I didn't work with Bob for about 8 years, and then I worked with Bob for the last 10 years of my time at NPR. And that relationship started from such an early friendship and love of music. And it just so happened that when Kevin, my dear friend and mentor, decided to leave Tiny Desk, he said, if you guys don't hire Josh, you're out of your minds. And that couldn't have been a better thing to have happened for me.
One more. This is our last one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There can be so many like negotiations and politics when dealing with musicians. Does Tiny Desk allow artists and their teams to have like this final approval or sign off, or do artists have to kind of hand all of that to NPR and trust the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. They often trust the process, but no, I mean, like Alicia Keys and her team wanted to hear, and Post Malone and his team wanted to hear, and John Batiste, and yes, of course. But what it is like, yeah, if there's an artist who recorded something and they're just not happy with it or proud of it, it won't come out because they killed it. There was an instance where we recorded like Nas, and it was an incredible session, and the record label flew in all these incredible artists to record, and I have it. It's amazing. But it'll never see the light of day because someone at NPR was upset about his politics and the accusations of this, that, and the other that has nothing to do with music, even though he was on like the Colbert Report and he was on all these other shows. NPR decided not to put it out for political reasons. There's so many little reasons, and there's a number of shows that were recorded that have never seen the light of day for whatever reason. But yeah, if the artist wants to kill it, sure. If the artist wants to give notes, certainly from an audio perspective, I would always take them and work with artists. Fred, again, we were like on FaceTime for like a week mixing his together. And he had a lot of respect for me and what I do, and he shouted me out from the rooftops, which was amazing and wonderful. But he still wanted complete control, and I was more than happy to collaborate and give it to him. So it all depends on the artist. And then they pressed it to vinyl, and now it's like a limited release vinyl that I have hanging on my wall with his signature. It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's a great note to end on. It's all about the artist.
That's
It's
right.
all about the art. As audio engineers, we're here to serve the art. We're here to serve the music and the message in the music. So it's a great privilege we have that for those of us who are, in this game, in audio engineering and live sound and anything that broadcasts a message. We have that responsibility to ensure that we do the best with that.
That's right. And if anyone has a follow-up or think of something later, just drop into my DMs, as they say, at Josh Rogosin, at Instagram, and all the places. Feel free to send me a note about anything you're up to. I'm more than happy to hang out and chime in.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. It's been amazing. So please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
So for those online, we might say goodbye as we go to our in-person next session here, our industry mixer and drinks. So thank you so much for joining us.